Hi guys, welcome to Joshua's Tech Tips. So in today's video, I'm going to show you a vulnerability scanning tool by the name of Nessus. In the digital landscape that we currently live in, cybersecurity attacks are on the rise. It seems like every day you're hearing of a major corporation being hacked or being breached in some form or fashion. It's my opinion that performing regular vulnerability scans can help you identify vulnerabilities on your network and help you remedy these before they're exploited by hackers. Throughout the years, I've used quite a few different tools to do vulnerability scans. However, in my opinion, Nessus is one of the best tools out there. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up and use Nessus to perform vulnerability scans on your network. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So I'm on my Kali Linux machine. Nessus is also available on Windows as well as Mac OS. However, in this demo, we'll be using Kali Linux. So first thing I want to do is open my web browser and search for Nessus Essentials. So I actually preloaded this in advance since it can be a bit tricky finding. However, I'm going to leave this URL link in the video description for you if you wish to follow along with this video. So as I indicated, we'll be using Nessus Essentials for this particular demo. So the main drawback with the Essentials is that it's only available to scan up to 16 IP addresses per scanner, right? But the good thing about this is that it's absolutely free to use. So if it's something that you want to follow along with, or it's something that you want to use on a small network that's up to 16 IP addresses, the Essentials would be good for you. Right, so first thing you need to do is actually register for an activation code. So you enter your details here and you hit the get started button. Right, so you actually need this activation code, so please don't skip this step. Once done, they will send you an email with the activation code, so be sure to check your email for that activation code. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and click the download tab, and this will take us to the download page. Right, so here we can see there are different versions of Nessus available. The latest is 10.3 and we also have 8 as the previous version. And we have different platforms that Nessus is available for here. Right, so as you can see, there's various Linux flavors. There's also Windows, Mac OS, etc. I'm using Kali Linux, so I'm going to be looking for the Debian version. Right, so here we have 32-bit and 64-bit, so I'm going to select 64-bit. And I'm going to hit the download button. Be sure to agree to the license agreement. And there we go, download has started. It's a pretty small installation file, so it doesn't take that long for the download to be completed. As we can see, it's already completed. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to open a terminal window to basically complete the remainder of the installation. In the terminal, I'm going to navigate to my downloads folder. You can do this by typing cd downloads. So now that I'm in my downloads folder, I want to list the contents of this folder. I type ls. As we can see, we have two Nessus installation packages. Right, I previously downloaded it before doing this demo, hence the reason you're seeing two. So what I want to do is actually install this package. So the command I'm going to enter is sudo dpkg-i and the name of the package, and it should automatically show up there. I'm just going to tab it out and hit enter. Alright, great. So we can see that the installing the package has been completed, so we want to start the Nessus service. So to do that, I'm going to type sudo systemctl start and name of the service. The service has been started, and I can verify that by typing sudo ctl status and the name of the service as well. And as we can see, the service shows as active and running, so it has been successfully started. So what we want to do next is head over to the Nessus dashboard, and we can access the dashboard by going to this URL, https://kali:8834. So I'm going to copy this URL, open back my web browser, I'm going to paste it. Alright, so as we can see, this is Nessus and it's initializing and it's compiling the plugins. So we're going to need to give it a couple minutes here to compile and update the necessary plugins. So I'm just going to leave it, let it do its thing. So once updated, it should bring you to a prompt asking for a username and password. I already had my credentials created as I used it prior. You may need to set one. Once you enter those, it will bring you to the initial wizard, right? So the welcome wizard, here it actually try to walk you through setting up your IP addresses that you like to scan, right? So there are several ways you could do this. You could enter IP address range, you could enter the first IP address dash the ending IP address, and this would basically scan a range. Or you could enter IP address and the side annotation if you want to scan your network. Or you could enter domain name. You can mix this, basically you can enter multiple different things separated by a comma. For this demo, however, we're going to close this since I'm going to manually show you how to set up these scans. Right, so if we head over to the settings tab, there's a lot of different settings to the side here, but I just want to show you a couple of the more important ones. Right, so for instance, if we head over to the scanner health tab, right here you'd actually see the status of your Nessus scanner, right, in terms of the memory utilization, CPU load, etc. So if any reason your scanner is not working as it should, it's locking up, you're getting a lot of problems, it might be worth checking out the scanner health to see if it's being overutilized, right? Next up, if we head over to the SMTP server tab, so what Nessus does, it has the option of emailing you, the scan results and reports. So you need to set up your SMTP server if you like to take advantage of that, right? So this is a very pretty handy option as well, right? As I said, there's a lot of different options, but those are probably two of the main ones in my opinion. So if you head over back to the scans menu, right, you could create a new scan here or at the corner of the screen here, right? So I'm just going to click on a new scan button here, and it takes you to all the available scan templates, right? So we have quite a few, as you see, and they are separated by categories. So we have the discovery scan, right? So as the name implies, this first scan, host discovery, basically scans your network and it discovers any available host on your network. It's a pretty good scan to do, just to give you an idea if there's any rogue devices or anything like that on your network, right? So that's the discovery scan. Moving on here, we have the vulnerability scans, right? So we have quite a few different vulnerability scans. We have the basic network scan, advanced. We also have a malware scan. This is pretty handy. A lot of the attacks nowadays is in the form of malware, right? We have a mobile device scan, pretty good to have as well. However, as you can see, there's an upgrade badge at the side here, so we actually need to upgrade to one of the paid plans to use that. We have the web application test scan as well, pretty handy, as nowadays we use a lot of web apps. Also available is a scan to check for the WannaCry ransomware. So as we know, a couple of years ago, WannaCry was a pretty big thing, you know, so they actually have a dedicated scan where you could check for that, right? Also available is the Active Directory status scan. You know, this is pretty useful just to check for misconfigurations in your Active Directory environment. And most enterprise organizations use Active Directory nowadays, so pretty handy scan here as well, in my opinion. At the bottom now, we have the compliance section. So this basically features a range of different compliance checks that you could do. We have the cloud infrastructure, so if you're using like AWS, Azure, etc., internal PCI scan, and a bunch of different others. As you notice, you need to upgrade to use any of these compliance scans, right? So you'd have to use one of the paid version of Nessus to use any of those scans. However, for this demo, we'll be focusing on two particular scans, right? And we're starting first with the host discovery scan. So I'm going to click on host discovery. And first thing we need to do is set a name for the scan. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to name it Demo Host Discovery. Once we set the name, we have the option of adding a description. However, I'm not going to do that for this case. And we can select which folder we want to place the scan in. I only have the default My Scans folder. However, you could set up additional folders to group your different scans. Here we'll enter the target address. So I'm going to enter my network of 192.168.1.0/24. So that'll basically scan my entire network. And I'm going to show you there's actually a feature here to add a file. So if you have exported a list of targets, you know, IP addresses that you like to scan, you could also add that file here as well instead of manually inputting the IP addresses. If we take a look at the side, we have the schedule option. So this is currently disabled. So we can enable this if you want to allow the Nessus to perform scheduled scans. So we have the option of doing daily, weekly, monthly, and setting a time. So this is great. This allows you basically to set your scans on autopilot, and once it's completed, it can actually email you the scan report. All right. However, I'm going to disable it for this demo, but that's a pretty useful feature. And over at the notification tab here, you could actually enter the email addresses, you know, for, let's say, for your cybersecurity team or whoever you'd like to get a copy of the scan. You could enter the email addresses here. For discovery, we have the scan type. We could change this option. It's currently set on enumeration. We could set it to OS identification, as well as to scan all ports or common ports, etc. So for the report option, we could allow users to edit reports, etc. For the advanced tab, here we have some options where we could actually increase the performance of our scans. So we could set the network timeout value, we could set max simultaneous checks per host, max simultaneous hosts per scans, etc. However, I'm going to leave those at the default settings for this demo. Right, so if I head back over to the general tab, it looks like we're good. So I'm going to save this scan, and when we head back over to our My Scans dashboard, we could see the scan has been saved. So to start the scan, I'm going to click on this little play icon, and this would basically launch the scan. And you'd see this little green spinning circle there, right? That would indicate the scan is currently being performed. So it looks like our scan has been completed. So to view the scan results, I'm just going to click on the scan. And as we can see, this is our scan results. So this is the list of all the current machines that Nessus was able to find on my network. So as we can see, we have all the IP addresses of the different devices that is able to find on my network. Also, beside the IP addresses, it also can find our FQDN names. So if you have domain names assigned to these devices, it would also show you that. Last but not least, you can see what available ports are open on these devices, and this is actually one of the most critical pieces of information, especially if you're a pen tester. So as we see, 139 and 445 are open on this machine, so this would off the bat will let me know this is a Windows machine, says those are the ports for SMB, and SMB has a lot of vulnerabilities associated with it, so being able to identify these ports are open, it's very good, especially if you're into pen testing. Automatically that would be a device you want to look at. Next, if we head over to the vulnerabilities tabs, so it shows 3, but this is essentially just information, so it's nothing to really be concerned about. If we look at the side here, this shows us info. So what we want to specifically look for in terms of vulnerabilities is really the critical and high vulnerabilities, and maybe medium to some extent. If we head over to the VPR top threats, it shows that the threat level is none. So basically, VPR top threats, it's a proprietary algorithm that Nessus uses to help us to basically prioritize vulnerabilities. So there's actually a machine I staged for the purpose of this demo, right, that has a lot of vulnerabilities on it. So that's this machine, the 192.168.1.105, right? I actually staged this for the purpose of this demo. So I want to particularly run a vulnerability scan against this machine, right? So this is basically a Windows 7 Service Pack 1 Windows machine, and we could see it's a Windows machine by the ports that's open on the machine. So I want to head over to new scan, and I want to select basic network scan. So this is a Windows machine, so I'm gonna actually enter the credentials to scan this machine. So I'm gonna name this scan credential net scan, right? Because we're seeing SMB port open on this scan, if you're a penetration tester, more than likely you won't even need to enter the credentials, but because there's a lot of hacks available for it, but I'm going to enter the credentials because we're assuming this is our network and we're just running vulnerability scans, with the credentials already in hand. So I'm going to hit the credentials tab, and I'm going to head over to Windows, since it's Windows credentials we'll be using, and I'm going to enter the username and password. So because this is the older version of Windows, I'm gonna uncheck the do not use NTLMV version 1, right, authentication. And this looks good, so I'm just gonna save the scan. And we can see that the scan has been saved, so we want to go ahead and launch the scan. The scan typically takes longer than the enumeration scan because we're actually scanning for vulnerabilities. However, I'm going to speed up this video so you won't necessarily have to wait for it to, go through that scanning process. So now that the scan has been completed, I'm going to click on the scan to see the results. So off the bat, we could see we have several vulnerabilities that has been found, right? If we click here, we'd see we have 2 critical, 4 high, 2 medium, and we have a bunch of info. So we have 24 vulnerabilities identified in total. And if we head over to the vulnerabilities tab, it gives us a complete listing of those vulnerabilities, right? So SMB, as I mentioned, we saw those ports open, so we kind of knew up front there'd be vulnerabilities associated, right? A pretty nice feature is the filter option, because searching through those vulnerabilities, one by one can be time consuming. So we could come over to the filter option and we could basically search by severity, because ideally we want to look for critical or high vulnerabilities. Those are the most pertinent, seeing that it's usually impossible to address all vulnerabilities. We want to search for higher critical. So I'm going to choose critical and apply the filter. So here you could see it's filtered out all, that noise and just showing us the critical vulnerabilities in particular. If we click on this, it shows us 2. So here we could see we have a vulnerability associated with DNS as well as unsupported Windows OS. Right, so this uses basically Windows 7, so that's the reason why it's showing unsupported. If we head over to the VPR Top Threats tab, so this also does a pretty good job of prioritizing, what vulnerabilities we want to probably work on, in terms of remediation. Right, so here it gives us the VPR score in 9.7, 7.3, etc. And it shows us a list of critical, high, and medium vulnerabilities. Right, so if we click on the critical vulnerability, so I'm seeing the name as MS17, so this is Eternal Blue. For a lot of you who are in cybersecurity would recognize that name. Right, so click on it, it shows us a bunch of different information concerning the vulnerability. It shows us the exploit code maturity as high, which is never a good thing. If we scroll down, we'd actually have some more information in terms of description about the vulnerabilities. So it shows us Eternal Blue, Eternal Champion, a lot of associated vulnerabilities here. Exploits. Right, so it shows us the WannaCry ransomware was actually associated with this Eternal Blue vulnerability. So this is something very critical and something you want to remediate as soon as possible. A nice thing it shows you is the solution. So it tells us that various service packs and updates have been made readily available to help us mitigate these vulnerabilities. So once we patch these, patch our operating system and also maybe disable SMB and some of these things that should not be open, this would actually help us to prevent, to patch this vulnerability and prevent it from being exploited. So it also shows us a knowledge base article that we could further refer to if we wish to. So scrolling down, we're seeing that the risk factor is high, As I said, this is a pretty severe vulnerability. And you hear Eternal Blue, definitely off the bat, you're thinking it's pretty severe. And exploit available, it shows us true. So a lot of the times we have vulnerabilities, but they're not exploitable. So there's not really technically too much of a risk. But the fact that it says that there is an exploit available and it shows us below what tools can be used to exploit it, it's pretty critical that we get this remediated. Right, so we've seen that Metasploit can be used to exploit this vulnerability. If that's something you want me to show you in the next video, how you can actually exploit a vulnerability like this and gain access, basically hack the machine, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll do a separate video showing you that. So another important factor in doing these scans is most of the times you want this data, the scan results in the form of a report. So I'm going to show you how to do that here, right? So basically we could select the scan in particular that we want, and we could head over to the report section on the top right hand corner there. Right, so reports are super useful since most of the time we don't want to have to coming back to this dashboard and search through all these vulnerabilities, etc. We could just have this in the form of a report once the scan's complete. Right, so we have several different formats: HTML, PDF, CSV. To save this report, I'm going to leave it on PDF. And as we can see, we have several different reports. In my opinion, the two most useful reports is the complete list of vulnerabilities by host as well as the detailed vulnerabilities by host. So the first one, the complete list of vulnerabilities by host, this would be particularly useful for like management, since this gives you a kind of high overall view of the vulnerabilities that exist. Right, the detailed vulnerabilities by host, however, this is a more detailed report as the name suggests, and this would be better for like your remediation team. So to get started, I'm going to select the first one, the complete list of vulnerabilities, and hit the generate button. And as we can see, the report has been generated. So here we could see it shows us at the top, the vulnerabilities available, right? We have 2 critical, 4 high, etc. And it just gives us an overview of the various vulnerabilities, a nice overview. So as I suggested, this might be more appropriate for management, for high-level management that's not really too concerned about remediating or finding solutions, but they just want to have an idea of what vulnerabilities actually exist. Next, I'm going to choose the detailed vulnerabilities by host and generate this report. So in this report, you'll actually see the difference in comparison to the first one, right? So if we scroll down, so here we could actually see, similarly as the previous one, it gives us an overview at the top. Here we could see some additional information is included. It has the host name, the IP address, the MAC. It also gives us the OS information, right? And it also gives us now the various vulnerabilities. So it gives us the vulnerability name, right? And it could allow remote code execution, and remote code execution is never a good thing, right? You want to take care of those type of vulnerabilities, as soon as possible. Now we could see here it also shows that it's exploitable, and it's exploitable again with Metasploit. And scrolling down, you could see, it gives you a lot of different and detailed information as opposed to the first report. So this particular report, in my opinion, is great for like your remediation team, your cybersecurity team, the team that's heavily involved in patching and rectifying, vulnerabilities. This type of report would be great for that team. And that pretty much brings us to the end of this demo. Guys, so that brings us to the end of this video. If you perform vulnerability scans in your organization, let me know in the comment section below, what tool do you use? Do you use Nessus? Do you use Nmap? Do you use Rapid7? I'm interested in knowing, so be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you found any value in this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the notification bell to be notified once a new video is released. Thanks again for viewing. See you soon.